Alright, this was bound to happen sooner or later, but you know what? Screw it. Let's talk about The Last of Us. Now, I've never talked about this before, I think, on my channel, but I'm just gonna give you a quick summary of my thoughts about everything that has to, well, do with The Last of Us, because I've just like pretty much the entire world, I just finished watching season 2 of the HBO show, and yeah, I got things to say. I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. I have to talk about things. But first of all, quick recap. The games, masterpieces. Yes, even the second one. Literally, the first two games I bought were Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. Played them back to back. I loved them. Great. Yes, Part 2 is very controversial, and no, there are things in that game that I don't think are great. I mean, there are things that could be different. For example, of course, the whole killing off Joel thing could have been done better. Yes, there was a lot of political messaging, and some things, for example, Mel being 8 months pregnant and still going on these military missions. There are stupid things in that game, I get it, but still that game hit me in my core, and the moment anything, like a game, a book, TV show, a film, whatever, actually hits me and sticks with me and even freaking just makes me cry, that's when I know that this has to be a good thing, and both games did. I've played both games twice now, and I still feel the same way. The first game, masterpiece. Second one, even though it has problems, I think is also a masterpiece. I honestly do think that the second game does certain things better than the first game. For example, I think the entire narrative of it taking place around a timeline of a few days, but then seeing events play out from different perspectives, I think is a very cool and strong point. I also think the world building is better in the second game. First game has great world building, don't get me wrong, but I honestly like when you're stumbling into Seattle and you slowly uncover the entire deal between the Seraphites and the WLF. I think it's really cool in the game because you don't know anything. You experience it all by yourself. I'm getting a bit derailed now, but honestly I think the games are great. However, the first thing I've ever actually seen properly, and I'm not counting the gameplay of the games on YouTube years ago, the first thing I probably saw was The Last of Us Season 1. A couple of years back when it premiered, I watched every episode when it came out, just like with Season 2. And Season 1 of The Last of Us I thought was fine, but it had some serious pacing issues. I thought the first episode, which was very long, I thought it was a solid opening, but still it felt rushed, because they were basically doing the entire prologue and the entire Boston stuff in one episode. Now, I thought that there were some cool additions. I thought they made some cool decisions. For example, that the prologue is filmed entirely out of the perspective of Sarah, which made her death even more shocking if you never played the game. So there were some cool things. However, that episode, even though being like an hour and 10 minutes, I think, was still pretty rushed. I wasn't overly hyped. Second episode, good. There was like the entire thing through, the city of Boston, battling the clickers and everything. Good episode. Episode 3, I thought was unnecessarily filler. I understand what they were going for. I understand that they were trying to make a point, but this was like one of those cases where I thought, like, guys, if you wanna show something, Bill and Frank being, of course, a homosexual couple, which is perfectly fine, because it's even hinted at in the game, but that's where it changes. Like in the game, it knew that story had to come first, so it was only very subtly hinted at that Bill and Frank were probably a couple. But in the show, you get this entire episode again of like 1 hour and 5 minutes or something. It's like a feature-length episode. You completely detract from the main story, and it gives no real addition. Yes, the love story between Bill and Frank is very sweet, but it doesn't really add anything. In the game, you have this great dynamic between Joel, Ellie, and Bill as they're constantly bickering with each other while also needing each other to stay alive. It's this very fun dynamic. Yes, Bill is a very hardened guy, and it's not like they part ways on the best of terms, but it was a fun, interesting dynamic, especially also with Joel and Ellie, who are still really getting used to each other, and that there's still very little, love to be seen there. But in this episode, they made the change, for some reason, to just focus an entire episode on this love story, while hardly, I'll dare you say, not paying any attention to the main story, which is, of course, developing the relationship between Joel and Ellie, because we all know that's 100% the most important part of the entire story of both of the Last of Us games. That's the relationship between Joel and Ellie, and this episode just completely ignored that, and that was a big red flag. Episode 4 and 5, were both tackling the Pittsburgh section of the game, were good. Good, a little bit rushed. I do like that they gave, the militia group of Pittsburgh, a leader, which made sense. The whole Henry and Sam thing is done well. It's good, but again, a little bit rushed. They don't show Joel and Ellie enough. Because at the end of episode 5, when Henry and Sam die, very tragically, we're literally more than halfway. We're like halfway into the season, and we're not at all at a point where I think Joel and Ellie are in the game at this point. Joel and Ellie in the show, and that's also a big thing, Joel and Ellie in the show are very much different than their game counterparts. Ellie is toughened up, while Joel is kind of weakened a little bit. Well, not really a little bit, just flat out. Now, of course, I understand changes, but I don't really understand those changes, because it makes their character development all the less meaningful, in my opinion. Then we go to episode 6, which is again fine, but it's again rushed, and it has some very questionable changes. Even to the point where they're entering this village of Jackson, and they're kind of promoting communism for some reason. I was like, what? Why? Why are you even making this point? It's like, it was really weird. It felt so out of place. Like, are you promoting communism right now? And so, with little hints, they flat out say, oh shit, communism, it's actually working. I literally don't know. I've seen tons of people mention this online. I don't really understand why they made a deal out of this. Now, this episode has a few good moments, but it doesn't match at all what it was in the game. In the game, Ellie runs away, Joel and Tommy have to go after her, they find her. It's just infinitely more interesting. In this episode, they had to condense stuff, they had to just have it play out in Jackson, but there's so many things just happening, and I don't know, it just doesn't flow right. It didn't flow right. That's it. Great acting from both parts. Honestly, I'm gonna put this out there as well. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey in this first season, mind out, in this first season, Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal do great jobs, as pretty much everyone else. But then we go to episode 7, which is the episode where we get Ellie's flashback with Riley, which resembles the Left Behind DLC of the game. Now, I played the Left Behind DLC twice. I really enjoy it. I really strongly recommend everyone who's gonna play The Last of Us, or who wants to play The Last of Us with DLC, I strongly recommend to play it chronologically. Play the game from summer and autumn. Then at the end of autumn, where Joel gets injured, you stop, you play Left Behind, and then when you finish Left Behind, you continue the main story with the winter part all the way to the end. It enhances it brilliantly, and that's what they're doing here as well, so I appreciate their effort. However, we again get a whole episode, a pretty long one as well, I think it's an hour long if I'm not mistaken, a pretty damn long episode where we completely just detract from the main story. Now in the game, now you can say, but God, dudes, Left Behind is also this flashback, and you just told us you have to play it chronologically. Yes, but the thing with the DLC in the game with Left Behind is that you constantly shift between timelines. You shift between the flashback with Riley and Ellie in the mall, but you constantly go back and forth between that and to the present, where Ellie tries to find medication and shows us how much she's grown to become this strong, independent survivor that, as Joel has taught her. That's interesting. You go back and forth, but in the episode of the show, you only stay at the mall. You don't really see anything going on in the present day. And it just slows down everything. You again have this whole episode, just like with episode 3, just like partially with episode 4 and 5, but only partially, where the main story just grinds to a halt. But you need the main story. You need events and things and conversations to see the dynamic between Joel and Ellie bloom. You need that, but the series, the TV show, isn't giving us that. So again, episode 7 happens, you see it all playing out, and then again it just kind of ends. I'm also gonna say this, I thought that a lot of episodes in season 1 ended very abruptly, like they were like trying to just get it over with for some reason. I don't really get why. It's The Last of Us. I honestly think when you're tackling such an important and well-beloved and just masterclass of an IP, treat every scene as you're making a masterpiece yourself. Don't just rush everything through. That brings us to the penultimate episode of season 1 with David and his cannibals. Again, rushed. It's a good episode, but again, extremely rushed. Like, there's this whole part of the game where you play as Joel and you're like rushing towards this city, trying to find Ellie, while you're also playing as Ellie, trying to escape from David. It's great, it's white knuckling, it shows us how much they've grown, it shows again how much Ellie has changed into becoming this hardened survivor, and also showing us how Joel has found his heart again, how Joel is now really feeling for Ellie and wants to save his, surrogate daughter again. It's great, but in the show you only see Ellie's perspective. The final fight between David is cut short, he instantly gets killed off, and then just all of a sudden Joel is there, rescues her, and just like with the previous episodes, we just kind of end. There's like no ending there, you don't get any room to breathe, and it's not meant as a compliment, you need room to breathe. Which brings us to the finale of season 1, which for some reason was so short. the final episode of season 1 was, I think, like barely 40 minutes. Why? It's your season finale. You can do stuff here. If you want to add things, add meaningful things here. But we just jump into the final episode, and yes, they add things. Yes, we open with the flashback of Ellie's mom giving birth with Marlene and everything. Yes, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. But you need more of that. Give us more meaningful additions instead of just having entire episodes of more than an hour long, just having to completely detract from the main story, which causes us to lose connection to the main characters. I don't understand, because episode 9, they just rush through things. We get a very little bit of Joel and Ellie, we get the giraffe scene, then instantly they get attacked. We don't get any clicker or any bloater or any infected action, which again is something that you really gotta mention. The first season of The Last of Us hardly had any infected action. Hardly anything. Why? There's plenty of it in the game. It's not like they didn't have the budget. Why not do more stuff with that? Just stretch it out. Give Ellie and Joel more time to shine, but they just don't. In the finale, they just rush through things. Joel wakes up, you get this whole moment in the hospital, Joel kills everyone, it's very well done, gotta say that, it's very well done. Joel rescues Ellie, and you're instantly back in Jackson, just bam, the season ends, and it just felt like it all had to happen so fast, and it just kept bugging me, because it's The Last of Us, it's not like this cheap B-movie we're watching. This is The Last of Us, one of the greatest stories of all time in my opinion. Why not do more with it? That being said, I know I've sounded pretty negative right now, but that's because these two games mean a lot to me. Last of Us Season 1, I thought it was fine. It had plenty of great moments, but it also had plenty of very questionable moments, and the pacing was just all off. And there was this strange, rushed feeling to it all. But that couldn't prepare anyone. And here we go. That couldn't prepare anyone for what was gonna happen in season 2. Season 2, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. What happened here? Guys, what happened here? Extremely disappointing, and it has inexcusably bad writing. I was extremely hyped for this. The game had plenty of issues, but it was up to the show now to correct those mistakes. Right? Because of course an adaptation should improve. However, episode 1 was a very clunky and confused opening. And it just sort of things happened, and I get what they were doing because it's really hard. I understand that they had a very difficult task of opening this season without immediately killing off Joel in the first episode. Now, I understand why they didn't want to do it. I understand why they wanted to introduce us a little bit again into this world. Now, episode 1 had some very clunkiness and some very weird scenes. Like the scene where Ellie just wins from a guy that's like 3 times her size. I just couldn't believe they were actually doing this stupid trope of girls that are clearly not up to the task of tackling such overpowered enemies, and they just easily do so. Look at the first game of Ellie and how she takes down enemies. She literally jumps at them from behind and stabs them in the neck with her knife. That's believable. That's how you can do this. There's not one moment in the entire game where Ellie just freaking tackles a guy and just overpowers him. That's stupid, and for some reason they do it in this season in the first, like one of the first scenes of the episode. I also think it's a very bad choice to immediately expose all of Abby's motivations. I think it's a very bad choice. I honestly think one of the strengths of the second game was that you have no idea who Abby is and her friends, and you have no idea why they killed Joel. You assume it's because Joel, of course, killed all those people, killed all the fireflies, and now they don't have a cure. You assume that, but you're really left hanging. You don't have any idea. It's only like halfway through the game where you finally find out why they really wanted to kill Joel, and that's what made it interesting. But literally the first scene of this season just flat out tells us what's going on and why they want to kill Joel, and I think that was a mistake. Now this brings us to episode 2, which is without a doubt the best episode of the entire series. It's brilliant. The Battle of Jackson, I loved it. The killing of Joel was dramatic. They even improved upon some things. I do think the whole scene with Ellie screaming and everything was a bit too dramatic. That's a regular thing in the second season. It was at times way too dramatic, where the game was a lot more nuanced and very more psychotic and cold and bitter. Like this season they did it the Hollywood way, if I can say it like that. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, and a lot of, speeches and everything. And I honestly don't really think that was the smartest move. However, I do think episode 2, Through Valley, was a masterclass of an episode throughout. This really restored my faith. I was like, okay, the first episode was clunky and some bad decisions were made. But if the entire season is going to be of this level, we're going to be fine. Oh boy. Oh boy. I was really naive. Because that brings us to episode 3, which was alright, but it had a strange tone. And this really set the bar for the rest of the season. Because for some reason, they decide to turn Ellie into a jokester again. Now yes, Ellie throughout the majority of the first game is a jokester. She's fun, she's lighthearted, but it's more also to really cope. And that's also especially in the second game, where Ellie is clearly a more dark and cold version of herself. She still cracks jokes here and there, but it's clearly more of a coping mechanism. It works. In the show, for some reason, they just turn her into a jokester for the fun of it. She's happy. And yeah, she has some serious scenes, I know, like when she wakes up after, losing consciousness, or when she visits Joel's grave. Yeah, there are serious scenes, but why on earth are you putting a scene this intense directly before another scene where Ellie and Dina are in a tent in the wilderness and they're just giggling about? And that really started to rub me the wrong way, which brings me to episode 4, which is without a doubt the worst episode of the entire season. I might even dare say series. This episode was insultingly bad. There are things that just don't make sense. You've got this pandering throughout this episode with the LGBTQ flags. And listen, don't start hating on me now. I don't have anything against representation. These two girls are just walking around cracking jokes constantly. Yes, Ellie and Dina in the game are also having some lighthearted banter here and there, but it's clearly to lighten the mood because they both know they might die at any moment. It's a coping mechanism in the game, and it feels like that, but in the series, for some reason, they thought it was a good idea to just have them crack jokes and just make it feel like they're on this little, they were on this trip, they were on this fun road trip for fun. Like, you don't at all get the feeling that Ellie is being tormented by Joel's death. She should be freaking mentally breaking at this point, but she's just cracking jokes. It's so insanely stupid. Not even to mention how rushed again everything felt. Like they didn't learn anything from the first season. They're rushing through things so fast. They're just going from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, just trying to have these entire days, because of course, the second game takes place over 3 days. They're trying to cram all of these things in, and I just don't understand why. Why is it so necessary to just cram everything into this one episode? Stretch it out, add meaningful things. But no, and then of course this episode ends with freaking Dina telling Ellie she's pregnant, and for some reason this leads to the most random sex scene I've ever seen in my life, leading again to the two of them just giggling and just laughing and just joking about. I just couldn't believe it. I watched every episode with my girlfriend, and I literally told her at the end of this episode that I was physically mad. This episode made me so angry, I can't even express it. The amount of shit this episode took on its source material was insane. The characters didn't make sense, the story didn't make sense, everything didn't make any sense. Which brings us to episode 5, which just continued this whole comedic tone, and I don't get it. Last of Us, especially part 2, is such a serious story. Why are you adding so much banter in this? Why? It makes no sense. Why are you portraying this as a sitcom? For crying out loud, this rubbed me such the wrong way. They also made Dina this hardcore badass in all of a sudden, which also just made no sense. Dina has this scene in episode 5 where she just starts to blurt out backstory, and it just feels so forced and unnatural, and Ellie just accepts it like she knows she's pregnant. For fuck's sake, you know you're pregnant. Why are you putting yourself at risk? Don't you care at all about your child? What kind of message does this send? I hate it. And yeah, I know the original game has stuff like this too, but that's the point I made at the beginning of this video. That's stuff from the game that I also thought was stupid. Why are you freaking increasing the level of stupidness in the series? Episode 5 ends with Ellie torturing one of her victims. And again, it's way too dramatic. I really prefer the game counterpart where Ellie's just cold-blooded, and it just fits the character so much more. While in this episode, you start with, again, Ellie just cracking jokes to all the way at the end, where she just, out of nowhere, shifts into this brutal murderer. Like, she's screaming and yelling and everything. And I'm like, fine, but where does this come from? You literally have 3 episodes, 3! episodes where Ellie is just cracking jokes the whole time, just seems so happy and careless, and all of a sudden she just freaking shifts into this murderous psychopath. I mean, it's weird, it's really weird. Which brings us to episode 6. Now, episode 6 I really liked. This was good, which also made me so frustrated because this episode showed us that the writers are indeed capable of producing and writing decent stuff. I don't know where they were with their heads the last couple of episodes, but episode 6, which is like, all the flashbacks with Joel and Ellie just strung together into one episode. I really liked it. It was good. And no, not just because of that Joel, but also, honestly, I thought it was really good. And yes, they made some changes. I thought it was a little bit weird that you changed the core reason why Ellie and Joel had a falling out. Because in the game, it's because Ellie forced Joel to finally admit what he did to the Fireflies, and that breaks her, which makes sense. In the series, or in the show, for some reason, it's because Joel killed Eugene, the husband of the psychologist, and he tried to lie about it and everything, but it's like, that's the reason they had a falling out. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I don't really understand why you would change that. That being said, I do think this episode had some phenomenal acting from both Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal. It's a good episode. Episode 6 and episode 2, without a doubt, are the only 2 episodes that are actually worth watching. I'm like, God, why? I was frustrated that this penultimate episode was actually of a very decent level. I know there are people who have problems with this episode, but honestly, I didn't. I think this was a really good episode. Yeah, it had some changes that I thought that I didn't really understand, but still, I really enjoyed it. And that brings us to the finale of the season. Now, I knew I had this very strong sense that we're really just going for the cliffhanger. You know the cliffhanger at the end of Ellie's timeline in the game, where Jesse gets killed off, and you have this standoff between, of course, Ellie and Abby. Yeah, that's it. And it pretty much happens exactly that same way. But again, it's so rushed. The episode is like barely 15 minutes long. You have this whole Isaac part as well. That's also a thing that I kind of appreciated, that they are already introducing the civil war between the wolves and the Seraphites. I get it, but it serves no purpose in this season. It serves purpose in the game because it's warming you up for what's to come, but in this season, you don't get anything out of it. Even in this finale, for some reason, Ellie is taken to the island, where she almost gets executed, but then with the biggest plot armor in history, they just let her go because they hear some explosions happening in the distance. So the Seraphites let her go, and Ellie just escapes off the island. It's this 5-minute scene, if even, and it makes no sense. It serves no purpose. It's so random. If you play the game, you know what's going on. You know that Isaac and his forces are launching this massive assault on the island. So yeah, but if you haven't played the game, it's so confusing. It's weird, because my girlfriend hasn't played the game. She knows what happens, but only because I told her what was going on. She didn't know what was going on in this episode. What's going on? What's with all the boats? What's with this island? What's with the explosions happening? What the hell? And I had to explain to her what it meant. And then, of course, she understood, but it left us both wondering, why put it in this episode? It makes no sense. The whole scene between Ellie and Owen and Meg, it again felt so rushed. Meg trying to get Ellie to save her baby, I don't know, it just again felt so over dramatic. I much prefer the game part where you get this full-blown panic attack. I much prefer that than this over dramatic scene again with the crying and the begging and everything. It's so over dramatic. And then the cliffhanger itself is fine. It's a good cliffhanger, but it's not really a cliffhanger that you put at the end of a season. I think this season should have been 15 episodes and just split into 2 parts, kind of like they did with the last season of Breaking Bad, where you had 8 episodes, then a couple of months waiting, and then the other 8 episodes. This episode would have served as a very good mid-season finale, but not as an actual season finale. Yeah, season 2 was extremely disappointing. There was some really bad writing here, and I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. The casting, yes, Pedro Pascal is good as Joel, even if they change his character so much. Bella Ramsey was good for the most part as Ellie in the first season, but here in the second season she just isn't up to par. And I'm not attacking the actress. I honestly think the amount of hate Bella Ramsey is getting on the internet I do think it's stupid. It's mean, it's mean-spirited. She doesn't deserve this. I do think she's a good actress, but she's just not the right choice for adult Ellie. She was a very good kid Ellie, but she's not a good adult Ellie. That's it. Not the way that she just doesn't look like the character, but also just the way she acts. But it's not... I honestly don't blame her. I really think she could maybe pull it off with better directing and just a better script. Because just let's face it, the big handicap of this second season is the writing. I just don't get it. And freaking Neil Druckmann is one of the writers of this season. I just don't get it. Yeah, Neil Druckmann wrote the second game, and yeah, I know the second game is hated by many, and yes, it wasn't perfect, but Jesus Christ, I just don't get it. The writing is terrible, and there's so much political pandering in this second season that it just took me out of it, especially in that 4th episode where they were like forcing things down. The line of Ellie saying that she's gonna be a dad just freaking made me laugh so loud. It makes no fucking sense that these two characters are in such a happy space while being in the middle of a war zone, while being consumed by vengeance, supposedly. It makes no sense. This entire season makes no sense. I love both games. I'm currently playing the second game again, and I just don't get it how they could have messed it up so bad. I really hope that they're gonna improve on the 3rd season from Abby's point of view. I highly doubt it, because that's just how these main productions are. They don't really listen all that much to the people, I think. They're pretty stuck up in their ivory tower. I mean, yeah, I bet they're comfortable, and they're probably gonna, blame us for the bad ratings and everything, but they should have done better. They should have done way better. I don't get it. I don't get why they would have tackled it in such a rushed, insultingly badly written way. I just don't get it. I honestly don't understand what happened. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Last of Us. I sincerely hope that they're gonna redeem themselves with the 3rd season. I doubt it, but meanwhile, I think I'm just gonna, continue playing the games again. I think I'm gonna play the games and just enjoy what a masterclass of a story it is. Because the games are still The Last of Us. This show is an alternate fever dream. It's not real, it's not canon in my eyes. It's something that fans made. It's just literally fan fiction with a high budget. That's what it is to me. Yeah. I noticed I've been talking about like half an hour about this thing. I'm gonna quit it here, guys. I really just want to share my thoughts on this TV show. I'm disappointed. Let me know what you guys think. Honestly, guys, if you enjoyed the second season, that's fine. I'm not gonna argue with you. If you enjoyed the second season, great. That's great. It's just not my cup of tea. I think they did a terrible job, and they should improve immensely. Anyway, guys, that was Insta for you. See you next time.